What if the woman once hailed as the breath of fresh air in a centuries-old monarchy had been secretly recording the people who welcomed her in? Yes, you heard that right. What if Meghan Markle, the Duchess of Sussex, the actress turned royal, the woman who claimed she just wanted a quiet life, had been harboring a shocking secret all along? What if that secret didn't just involve scandalous interviews, passive-aggressive documentaries, or carefully timed PR bombs, but actual audio surveillance inside the walls of the British royal family? Not rumors, not whispers, but full-blown recordings of private, intimate, unfiltered royal conversations, including those with Queen Elizabeth herself. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. And what if I told you that it wasn't the tabloids, the paparazzi, or the press that uncovered this? It was Princess Eugenie, Meghan's friend. Let that settle, because this is not just a tale of betrayal. It's a story about silence, broken, about trust, shattered, about royalty, redefined. And it all begins with a black device no bigger than a thumb drive, tucked deep inside the velvet seam of a royal armchair. What was captured on that device would send shockwaves through Windsor, Sandringham, Balmoral, and beyond. But before we get to that bombshell moment, let's take a step back. Because to understand the magnitude of this scandal, we need to unravel everything that led to this extraordinary moment, where the monarchy turned against one of its own. And it started with love, or at least what looked like it. A royal welcome turned cold. When Meghan Markle walked into the royal scene, the world took notice. An American divorcee, biracial, charismatic, media-savvy, she wasn't just a breath of fresh air. She was a hurricane of change. The Queen gave her blessing. Charles walked her down the aisle. William and Catherine smiled for the cameras. Princess Eugenie, close in age, easygoing, unproblematic, took an immediate liking to Meghan. She extended the olive branch behind closed doors, inviting Meghan into the Windsor fold, introducing her to the real palace behind the public facade. And for a while it worked. Public appearances were smiles and coordinated hats. Private dinners were laughter and shared confidences. Eugenie was reportedly one of the only royals to visit Meghan after Archie's birth. The two women were close. Family close. But cracks began to show. It started subtly. Phrases from private palace conversations echoed strangely in press gossip. A conversation Eugenie had with Meghan in the Rose Garden somehow made its way, twisted and weaponized, into a Netflix fictionalized script. At first, it felt like coincidence. But coincidences began to pile up. Eugenie, the reserved, loyal daughter of Prince Andrew and Sarah Ferguson, began to notice patterns. And she wasn't alone. Staff began to whisper. Something wasn't right. Something was being heard. The conversation that should have stayed between sisters. Let's talk about the night everything changed. Eugenie and Meghan had shared a deeply emotional moment one evening during a small gathering at Frogmore. No cameras, no aides, just family. Meghan had opened up about the difficulty of royal life. The pressure, the expectation. Eugenie, in return, had shared her own struggles, her fears as a new mother, her anxiety about raising children under the relentless eye of the crown. They embraced. It was real, raw, vulnerable, and yet, weeks later, a startlingly accurate version of that private moment appeared in an anonymous Hollywood gossip column. Even the cadence of Eugenie's words, her exact phrasing, had been mimicked. That's when the alarm bells started to ring. Eugenie didn't confront Meghan. Not yet. She waited. She watched. And then she started listening. Why this story matters now. So why are we telling this story now? Because silence, for too long, has been the currency of royalty. For decades, the palace's golden rule has been, never complain, never explain. But we are living in a different era now. An era where secrets don't stay locked behind gilded gates. Where loyalty can be mistaken for weakness. And where betrayal doesn't come with a sword. It comes in the form of a blinking red light tucked into an antique chair. The Queen is gone. King Charles is reigning. The monarchy is changing. And this moment, this revelation, has become the final fracture in a royal saga that has slowly unraveled since Harry and Meghan's infamous Megxit. This isn't about one family member going rogue. This is about whether the walls of Buckingham Palace are still sacred, or whether they've been turned into content farms for personal gain. A line crossed, a crown shaken. Recording conversations in private, without consent, isn't just unethical. In royal circles, it's treasonous. It's the highest breach of trust. The Queen didn't allow cameras into her private chambers, not even in death. Yet, someone allegedly walked those halls and pressed record. When the late Queen Elizabeth found out what had allegedly been done, how her conversations may have been preserved, dissected, and stored, sources say she was heartbroken, betrayed not by an outsider, but by someone she welcomed as family. The monarchy is about ritual, tradition, and discretion, and someone had crossed a line, not just legally, but culturally, spiritually. Royalty is built on trust, and that trust had just been shattered. But there was one person who refused to let it slide. Princess Eugenie, a woman not known for drama, not known for politics, but known, fiercely, for family loyalty. She had the chance to stay silent, to protect herself, but she didn't. Because when she found the truth, when she discovered the extent of the betrayal, she made a choice. She went to King Charles. And what happened behind closed doors from that point forward would become one of the most intense, emotional, and consequential royal operations in modern history. No press release, no press conference, no official statement, just silence, followed by erasure. Title stripped, crest removed, public invitations canceled. Meghan Markle, once welcomed as the modern face of the monarchy, was quietly, completely removed. But here's the twist. It wasn't just the Queen's voice on those recordings. And that changes everything. The curiosity gap you won't want to miss. Because in this expose, we're not just talking about drama. We're uncovering a covert operation allegedly carried out inside the royal walls. We're tracing the emotional journey of a friend-turned-whistleblower. We're exposing contradictions, false narratives, and a series of events so carefully covered up until now. From the moment Eugenie found that first clue, to the heartbreaking words reportedly said by the Queen upon hearing her own voice replayed, to Harry's cryptic, chilling confession behind palace doors, to the final meeting where King Charles made the hardest decision of his reign. We're going to unpack it all. So if you think you've heard everything about the royals, think again. Because what Princess Eugenie uncovered wasn't just a betrayal. It was a time bomb. And when it exploded, it blew open the hidden truths that even the royal biographers never dared to write. But before Eugenie exposed the biggest royal betrayal of our generation, she was Meghan's closest confidant. So how did one of Meghan's only allies become the one who took her down? That's where our story begins. How does a friendship built on whispered secrets, tears over motherhood, and candlelit dinners turn into the most explosive betrayal in modern royal history? And how did Princess Eugenie, one of the few royals who dared to embrace Meghan Markle when others recoiled, go from Meghan's confidant to her quiet destroyer? Let's rewind to where it all began. The unlikely alliance. When Meghan Markle first stepped into the royal limelight, the welcome was complicated. On the surface, smiles were offered, tiaras adjusted, protocols explained. But behind closed doors, it was a cold front disguised as regal decorum. Except for one face in the crowd who didn't hide behind forced smiles. Princess Eugenie. No one expected Eugenie to be the one who embraced Meghan. But she did. Why? Maybe it was because she, too, understood what it meant to live in the royal shadow without the spotlight. Maybe she saw something of herself in Meghan. Another woman who wanted to be more than just a royal. Or maybe Eugenie just believed in giving people a fair chance. Whatever the reason, Eugenie became Meghan's unofficial guide into royal life. A bridge, a buffer, a sister when the rest of the palace felt like strangers wearing crowns. There were late-night calls, secret brunches in the country, whispered venting sessions behind thick Windsor walls. It wasn't just friendship. It was sisterhood. It was survival. So what went wrong? Everything. A perfect weekend, until it wasn't. The final weekend before it all began unraveling was picture perfect. Meghan and Harry had invited Eugenie and her husband, Jack Brooksbank, to their countryside retreat for what was supposed to be a relaxing getaway. No press, no palace, just four young royals sipping wine, swapping stories, and pretending, just for a moment, that the world outside didn't exist. One night, after dinner, as logs crackled in the fireplace and the kids had finally fallen asleep, the topic turned personal. Meghan opened up. She talked about the pressure, the suffocation of expectation, how she felt like her every move was weaponized by the press, and worse, by her in-laws. She said she didn't feel seen. Not by the family, not by Charles, not even by William and Kate. Eugenie, ever empathetic, reached out and grabbed Meghan's hand. And then she opened up. She admitted she had felt it too. That no matter how much good she tried to do, her charity work, her public engagements, she was always the daughter of Andrew. Always walking the tightrope of royal duty and scandal by association. They cried. They laughed. They poured more wine. It felt safe. It felt sacred. But what if it wasn't? The slippery slope of doubt. 2 weeks after that weekend, a piece ran in a British tabloid. Anonymous sourcing, speculative language, but unmistakably accurate. It referenced Meghan and Eugenie's shared pain, mentioned a candid fireside conversation about motherhood, and even quoted a phrase Eugenie distinctly remembered saying, "Sometimes I feel like I'm just a name on a family tree." That line had never left her lips outside of that room. Ever. At first, Eugenie hoped, it was coincidence. That maybe the phrase wasn't that unique. That maybe she'd said it to Jack in public once. That maybe the media was just being clever. But the more she reread the article, the more her stomach churned. It was too specific, too intimate, too real. The second leak. But Eugenie didn't confront Meghan. Not yet. She told herself maybe it was Harry. Maybe someone overheard. Maybe anything else. But then it happened again. Another leak. This time, it was about her son. August. Something about a comment she'd made to Meghan in the nursery. Something about her hopes for him to grow up out of the spotlight, to not carry the burden of a crown. She had said that once. One time. And once again, it ended up, in slightly altered form, in a Netflix voiceover. It wasn't even in an interview. It was buried in background narration. Just vague enough to avoid lawsuits. Just specific enough to sting. Now Eugenie wasn't just suspicious. She was furious, trying to rationalize the impossible. But here's the thing. Even then, even after 2 deeply personal betrayals, Eugenie still didn't believe Meghan would do something so cruel. She called Harry. Casual. Light. Just to check in. She brought up the articles. The eerie similarities. The concern that maybe someone was eavesdropping. Maybe there were leaks in the staff. Harry's voice shifted. He didn't accuse. He didn't defend. He just said, "You never know who's listening these days." It was a throwaway comment, but it felt loaded. That's when the cold dread settled in. Eugenie stopped speaking freely in her own home. She removed phones from certain rooms. She stopped texting Meghan. Stopped calling. Started pulling away in the most British way possible, politely, quietly, and with increasing distance. But Meghan noticed. Meghan's reaction, confusion or guilt. To her credit, Meghan tried to reach out. Several times. A voice note. A few texts. One message said, "I miss our chats. Don't go quiet on me." Another. "Are you okay? I feel like I did something wrong." Eugenie didn't respond. Because how do you say, "I think you recorded me," to someone who once cried in your arms? You don't. So she stayed silent. Until the silence broke itself. The staff whisper that changed everything. One afternoon, Eugenie was in Windsor Castle for a private family event. A senior maid, someone who had served the Queen for nearly 2 decades, pulled her aside gently. What she said was simple, chilling, and unforgettable. "There's something you should see. Something I found while cleaning Frogmore Cottage." That something was a small, black device hidden beneath the fabric of a velvet armchair. It had a blinking red light. It was warm. It had been on. Recording. Possibly transmitting. The staff member didn't go to Charles. Didn't go to William. She went to Eugenie. Because she trusted her. And now, Eugenie had a choice to make. Expose it or bury it. Eugenie stared at the device. It wasn't large. It wasn't flashy. It didn't even look high-tech. But it pulsed, silently, steadily, like a heartbeat. A heartbeat of betrayal. She didn't touch it. Didn't move. For a moment, the noise of Windsor Castle faded completely. All she could hear was her own breath. Shallow. Trembling. Who else had seen it? Had anyone else known? And the question that haunted her the most. How long had it been there? The staff member. A woman in her 60s who had served Queen Elizabeth loyally since Eugenie was a child. Simply said, "It's not the only one." Those 5 words turned suspicion into certainty. Unraveling the web. Within 24 hours, 2 more devices were discovered. One behind a radiator in a drawing room often used for private chats. Another inside a hollowed-out book on a shelf in the nursery. Eugenie's hands shook as she scrolled through photos the staff had taken before removing the devices. Each one small, sleek, modern, not off-the-shelf recorders. These were professional, which meant money, intent, and access. And the only person with that kind of access to those specific rooms was Meghan. Now let's pause, because some of you watching might be asking, could someone have planted them to frame Meghan? It's a fair question, but here's the problem. The devices were dated, and forensic IT experts brought in quietly, trusted palace contractors who had handled cybersecurity for years, determined the microphones had been installed during a very specific 3-month window. The same 3 months Meghan had been redecorating Frogmore. Coincidence? Or careful cover? You decide.